35th annual meeting. We had this, election of officers. Tom Hill, elected president. Delbert Zernicke, vice president. Dick Smith, treasurer, and Jerry Poles, secretary. We had a little discussion, and we just said, one of the communities brought it up about staffing the second ambulance. Some of the people in this community thought it should be, and we just figured out it just isn't feasible to start another. It'd be just double your cost if we just can't afford to go into that, so that was all we had for the annual meeting. We went into our regular meeting. March was a bad month. We had 32 calls with 8 new transports, so that only left 24 transports. The village had 13, so it was bad. We ended up, we were a little over $1,000 in the hole in March. I got a report today, and I don't know what happened in April, but we jumped from $1,000 in the hole to $6,000 in the good in 1 month. So whatever we did was right.
You must have hauled some in.
They really, our next discussion was, our furnace went out again. So Olson come and patched it, he didn't charge any, he patched, so we discussed putting a furnace in. Well, they said, well, we'll wait now, we'll do it at budget time. So they would do it at budget, that's October, November. We need a furnace before that.
I would think that the prudent time to put a new furnace is.
So, I discussed it, and we got a little over $10,000 in the equipment fund. So we said, let's put it in and pay it out of there and then decide how we're gonna do it. Well, because then they said, well, there was all different quotes around. But then they said, well, we're gonna put it on sealed bid now, so nobody knows what's happened. But then they brought up, well, now the air conditioner are 30 years old. Now what do you do? So we said, get a bid on the air conditioners and the furnace. Get 2 separate bids or 1 separate bid or whatever you want. And have them all, we're going to be all closed bids. We're going to bid on the 27th of June on our next meeting. Is when we're going to open the bids on it. It's going to be comparable to what's in there now. So anybody wants to bid on it can bid on them. Either way, whatever it is. Just air conditioner, just furnace, or double.
Well, you know the new air conditioners can be more energy efficient than what you have.
Well, I meant, yeah, because it's all 30 years old.
Yeah.
But the first one out now, we found some parts that he patched it up again to keep it going, to hope warm weather comes for a while. Then the next discussion, I didn't understand them too much, but they want us, each community, to possibly support a first responder. A first responder today at NWTC is over $500 to train them. And they get no income back out of that. First responder doesn't get paid. And they were wondering if each community would support one first responder. But there's going to be more discussion on it later because they said it's a $500 cost just for that training for one person. That's all we had. That's it for us.
Bob, how many first responders do they have now, do they say?
I think there's 7 first responders.
7, okay.
Yeah. They got a couple new ones now again, but,
That's probably why they can't staff the second squad.
well, yeah.
Where you're on.
Then they move on to EMTs if they want, but to get it to be an EMT, it's more money, but then they get paid.
Right.
But first responder doesn't get paid, and that's... But they're gonna have more on that later on, and they may, instead of charging each community, they might try and work it somehow in a budget or somewhere to sponsor them.
Thank you, Bob, appreciate it. Next was the bid opening, Monday, May 9th, 2016 at 2 p.m. Contract 295-16-03, 2016 utility construction at East Glenbrook Drive. I'll turn the floor over to Paul. Thank you for waving, I couldn't spot you.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, there was a bid opening yesterday. 5 bidders from just shy of $61,000 was Carl Bowers and Sons to a little over $84,000 from DeGroat Incorporated. Carl Bowers is a very competent contractor. We've worked a number of projects with them. I'm actually working a couple right now with them. Very confident. And the estimate was $75,000. The pre-bid estimate from the engineer was $75,000. So these numbers are all right in the wheelhouse. And the side benefit of this project, it does serve the Bellin property. It serves future properties to the north. And it will shorten this real long lateral from the village hall. We'll tie into it right alongside here. So that'll be a good thing for Joel as far as maintenance goes.
And it makes it nice and clean because the only way they could get sewer and water previously was from Karch Drive. That road's 30 years old. It's been broke several times in the vicinity. If it was undersized, that was what was really holding up the Bellin project. And this is TIF 2, and we put that property in TIF 2 because hoping that something commercial and viable would eventually land there. And so we've got the right-of-way, along our driveway right to the property line of Karch. We'll run that upsized sewer and water to the Karch property, and from there, it's their expense to where they want to take it and where they want to build the buildings.
This size of pipe that we're putting in is going to be able to, that whole space, whatever it becomes, it'll be
And then some.
plenty for that, okay, good.
Even included sprinklers in the buildings.
Oh, good.
It's an 8-inch water main and an 8-inch sewer. That's enough to do a good-sized subdivision.
Awesome.
So with that, we have a low bid of $60,970.00 by Carl Bowers and Sons of Kaukauna. A motion to award the bid.
One question for Paul, yet, the quote is 84,000, Carl and Bowers and Sons is 60. Why is such a big difference between them?
Oh, I'll tell you, Roger, I had a bid opening in a different community yesterday, and I had one bidder, because all of these contractors are loaded with work in
Okay,
the immediate future. So they're just throwing numbers at things. If they get it, they're gonna make it worth their while.
okay.
Good contractor, Carl.
Very good contractor. We've had very good luck with them.
Good.
And they said they were in between jobs, looking for work.
Well, they worked till yesterday. I got this one and the other one I was referring to. They were the sole bidder on one.
So they got more work than they
Yeah.
expected. Well, I hope they start ours a hurry. By Bob Gieske.
I'll second.
Seconded by Roger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I missed the Tri-County Fire Department Board of Directors of April 26th. I was out of the state and did not attend, and that's why I forgot. The chief updated you on all the important stuff, and really, there probably would have been an election of officers, and I hope that they didn't vote. Because usually the guy that's not there gets voted in.
You're in, Reed.
And I didn't get the minutes either, so I'm a little bit concerned now. Planning and Zoning Commission of May 10th, 2016 at 5 PM, just a mere hour and a half ago. The Planning and Zoning Commission, and this is informational only, site plan and design review for the consideration and approval. They recommend approval for Bellin Health Systems, 723 South Wisconsin, Highway 32, Pulaski, for an 8,875 square foot medical clinic, Zone B2 Highway Business, and they expect to start by the end of the month, or the 1st of June, and have a soft opening probably November 1st.
Wow.
So, item number 8 we'll scratch because I made a mistake and had you vote on it earlier. That was to adopt the ordinance. Number 9, consideration of Worcester Winds project development within TID number 4 And A is consideration of the developer's incentive component of the development, and B is consideration of community development authority funding. And with that, I'm going to turn the call over to Bill. Well, over to them first? Okay. Jared, I guess.
I will leave the show. Jared, it's on you.
I have motion on the floor for Jared.
I'll second.
I'll just quick give you, well, good evening, everyone. I'll quick give you a little sketch that, very similar to what Al talked off of, and just gives you a little picture of what he's got planned and just kind of the timing of those activities. I guess the theoretical timing, as we know, everything he's doing is on a projection basis, trying to lay out theoretical sales of homes and properties and things like that are always challenging. A couple more, I don't know if you guys want to take a look and share. I need one. I almost made it. So I guess the basis of what we wanted to discuss today and talk about was the pending development, the desired development that Al wants to put together. Tied to that is a number of steps. We kind of started down the planning avenue, having discussions with Al relative to what his plans are, facilitating those plans from a development standpoint. Had some discussions on, from the attorney's end, from a developer's agreement, had the discussion with the accountant from a financing standpoint, and trying to pull all the details together of how this development can become possible. And with what Al's trying to accomplish and what he's trying to do within this marketplace, it becomes a little bit challenging from an overall financing standpoint. So he's requesting some TIF assistance to help fund, by and large, some of the public infrastructure associated with these developments. There's two components. The one we want to focus in on, I think, is the senior living by and large. But senior living, he'd like to get started on. So sequentially, he's building on his third of 3 lots, so I think the residential component would come as well. But what the discussion had is, what do these incentive packages look like? What would a developer's agreement look like? What would an implementation of those plans look like? And I think it was decided that perhaps there should be the opportunity, there should be the discussion to enlist the help of the CDA, the Community Development Authority that the village has had in place for a lot of years. I don't know the last time they've met, it may be 10 odd years ago. But what bringing the CDA does is it gives another layer for these type of requests to go to for consideration, a little bit more dialogue, and then it's something that the board can use as a resource. Not trying to tell you folks what to do by any means, but just kind of laying out what may be an option. Another benefit of the CDA is it gives the village another borrowing avenue. So to fund these infrastructure projects or components of them, the CDA opens up different avenues for financing that the board doesn't have available to them. The biggest challenge is that you've got general obligation debt, which is kind of one pot of money. And then when you look at it from a TIF financing, because the intent of this development and the projections that they look at, the construction value will ultimately pay for the improvements without use of general fund dollars, without use of general taxpayer dollars. And that's the key behind this, is that can be analyzed and vetted and ensure that it's a good sound development if public funding through the CDA would be utilized, or the general obligation, but it would be repaid and refunded through TIF dollars generated from that development. So by and large, those costs are going to allow him to build something that may not be built. For example, the 12-unit apartment building, it's kind of a unique format. It's being built, again, as a senior living concept. Challenges with seniors are up and down steps. When you get to advanced ages, it just becomes problematic. So that design is 12 total units, but it's got 8 first floor units and only 4 upstairs. There's only 4 of those units that are dedicated to someone that has to use stairs, because there's not elevators. For a building that size, it just becomes financially impractical to do that. So the 4 buildings on the bottom, or the 8 units on the bottom, along with all of the attached garages, makes this thing pretty massive. It's got a big footprint compared to what a typical 12-unit multifamily resident or multifamily building would have. So that adds a significant amount of cost. So trying to offset some of those costs to get the rent that he can get within this market is a main driver behind the request for financing. And again, going back to the CDA, is that the financing through the CDA, whether it's a revenue bond, is that the correct word, Bill? A revenue bond, it doesn't impact your total general obligation debt total. It's basically its own set of money, it's its own pot of money. It's an opportunity for you guys to get a secondary financing, and it allows you to do other things within the village. Whether it's, complete the building here, TID 2, we're looking at the lift station that I believe got approved maybe last month or at a previous meeting. And what we also can do is we can roll other TIF expenses into that revenue bond. There's a lot of options, and I don't think we're in a position to make those decisions or necessarily even bring all those options forward. But if we can refer this to a CDA, or perhaps the board just wants to explore it further, is what direction does this possibly move forward to? And I think the main thing, and Al, you can jump in here, is time is always of the essence. The desire is to keep the momentum going. We got the hotel up, we got the CDRF open, we got the couple houses built, is that you'd like to keep going and get started on the multifamily component. You'd like to get started on a number of the duplex condo units. And it's just something that those wouldn't necessarily happen unless a developer's agreement can be reached, and if there can be some type of financial assistance. So it's kind of the big overview of the picture, the different players and the different components of that. But I think that's the reason we're here to talk about and see what the feel of the board is, and if that's a reasonable request. And Al, I don't know if I left anything out that you wanted to mention.
Let's hit it all.
But it kind of gives you an overview of what those potentials are. So to go back to the map I put in front of you, in the red box, we've got the different phasing of the multifamily or the senior living concept. And what you'd like to do is put up one of the two 12-unit buildings this year, maybe start on the second one, and then the 6 condo units kind of on the southeast of the multifamily would probably put up 3 of those buildings this year. I know hopefully we got a couple of those sold. Can't sell them yet because they're not marketable, but at least the concept, there's potential to get people into those. And some of those folks would like to move in this year. So there's the urgency behind keeping these things going when there are potential purchasers and potential users for these items that don't exist within the village right now. So I think that's the gist of what I had to kind of cover as far as the bigger picture, and I don't know if there's more specifics, or Bill, if I left anything out that would be important to the discussion today, or if there's any questions from the board that we can further answer.
I have a few, I'm sorry. I don't want to drag the meeting out, but you went above and beyond my capability of comprehending this all.
Sure.
These general fund dollars, CDA, public funding. I recently had a discussion with a disgruntled taxpayer in Pulaski that we talked about the development out there, and he was happy to see that coming also to Pulaski, but he said, will it cost us taxpayers any money? So are you saying that you're looking for an incentive from the village of Pulaski to help along, get that started, versus going out and getting other investors? Your presentation was a little bit above and beyond
Sure.
what I could comprehend here, so.
Yeah, I'll do the best to answer that, but, if you want to jump in, I think the objective of the TIF and the TIF financing is that it's not taxpayer dollars that's going into it, it's dollars generated from the development. When a TIF is created, you freeze the value, and then the village captures the value from not only the village component, but the school district, the county, and the technical college. And those additional funds are allocated to the specific district, and this would be TIF district number 4. And then those dollars can be helped to do things in the district, whether they're public improvements, developer incentives, wayfinding signages, different improvements that won't otherwise happen without the creation of the TIF. So I guess the easy answer is it's not, and I think that's one of the things that we looked at with this is, even though you could pay for this with general obligation debt, it would still be repaid by the TIF, which isn't necessarily the taxpayer dollars direct. You know, it's from that district, dollars captured from that district. I think within the developers agreement, there's discussions about if the construction values would come in a shortfall, that there's guarantees back from the developer. So it's, you know, by and large, it's set up in the way that the village has structured deals for the last 10 years is that there's protection to the taxpayer of the community and that, you know, the developer isn't taking their money. The developer is utilizing, you know, their opportunity and their development, their pro-development within your community to fund infrastructure costs.
Okay, what is CDA?
Community Development Authority, which we've had on the books since 1988.
Okay,
Did they help with our
That's what
apartments and our Nancy Lane?
Built the roads, did the, you know, and I sat on that one. I remember Seeger Swanson, and the documents were that high, the book.
There were like two big binders with.
But without that CDA, none of that would probably have ever happened.
Well, even tonight, when we look at the new plumbing that we're running, TIF dollars to kickstart a project that bringing, billing out of that small church and expanding it.
okay, so the disgruntled taxpayer, I'll bring it to
The 12 members of the hotel group all had to sign personal guarantees that if there were shortfalls, they would make up the shortfalls.
So the
So we
easiest way I
have
see to
protected the
describe-
taxpayer.
Sorry. The easiest way I see to describe it is, you know, we're creating this tax, this real estate tax, that we're responsible to pay as the owners of the building, like the hotel.
Right.
Or the mall. I mean, that was TIF 2. And that, you guys helped with that, and it's been very successful. And it pays, you know, $60,000 a year, and it's ahead of itself in paying off TIF number 2. And anything in excess of making that payment, that is the loan that we're gonna ask the CDA to possibly ask the CDA to go after or bond. You know, anything in excess of making that payment, the leftover funds are for doing lift stations, doing a water loop. We're actually creating more money than what the loan would be, so that you can use it for, like we just said, you know, the Karch property and things like that. So you get to recoup that money for 20 years before that actually goes on to the regular real estate taxes, if I'm correct.
Are they all 20 years, or is that?
They're set at 27 now, Bill?
I believe that's.
Yeah, the mixed-use TIFs are 20 years with a 3-year extension. Industrials and blighted can be 27. There's some other ones that are a hair shorter, but for this one, it's a mixed-use TIF, which is a mixture of commercial, industrial, and residential, and it's a 20-year life with a 3-year extension if you have debts to be paid.
Good, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Reed, if I could add something.
Yes, Bill.
We had a meeting on Friday last week to talk about this, and Brad Frank was there. He couldn't be here tonight, but one of the concerns, or one of the reasons it was suggested for bringing the CDA into this was that the village has approximately, was it $3.2 million left in its debt structure before we hit the levy limit where we can't borrow anymore. So the concern was we don't want to get too close to that. So instead of using all village direct funds for those these projects, that the CDA would get involved and borrow the money on a bond to cover some of these development costs within the TIF. So there's a split, and I'm not sure where everybody is yet with the split of how much would be going under the CDA, how much would be going to the village. I think Brad was working on that, so I haven't seen anything from him since we talked on Friday, so I'm not exactly sure where that is, but that was the reason for bringing the CDA in. We've not done a CDA project in, as we said, decades, but again, because we're getting close to that debt ceiling, and you're looking at the numbers here, they're pretty high, so we didn't want to push that debt ceiling any further than we had to, or than a recommendation that you don't push it any higher than it is. So that way, if you use the CDA, that doesn't come under that debt ceiling, it's a different entity. And kind of going full circle to your question, it is taxpayer money that's involved in here, but it's the taxpayer who's building in the TIF district that's actually funding this. So their taxes are being used to repay the village. So from a timeline perspective, the village is going to, in order to meet the incentive requirements, the village has to come up with the money now. So we have to go out and borrow, so there's the principal plus the interest that we have to cover. That amount that's being borrowed is based on projections of what the value of that property is going to be when it's done and generating tax revenue. And in the past, we've always been successful with that. The projections of what the value is going to be have always been either there or higher than what they started out with. So the revenues being generated by those developments from a tax basis have always been out there to bring in enough money to pay the debt that we incurred up front. But as was discussed, if there is a shortfall, so that if the tax rates are down or for whatever reason, the taxes being generated by that development are not enough to cover the village debt that was incurred for that component of the project, then there is a initial guarantee that's coming from the developer themselves. So, for example, with the CBRF, there's an agreement under the developer's agreement that the CBRF and their parent company would guarantee that shortfall. There's a backup guarantee to that the individual shareholders of those companies would guarantee that the company would make its payment if the company doesn't have the money to do it. So it's sort of a double guarantee to protect the village in that sense. And it's on an annual basis, so that gets reviewed every year. That's more Brad Frank's job than mine or Jody's or anybody else's. He's looking at that at the front end to make sure that there's going to be a sufficient projection of revenues from those from the taxes imposed on those properties to cover the debt that we're incurring. Obviously, there's a risk, but there's some backup guarantees to that. That again, we've never had to use in all the years that we've done these. I believe this is maybe the 6th or 7th time we've considered, or you've considered, a project like this. The numbers are obviously getting bigger, but the concept is still the same.
Yeah. I would like to say I'd like to apologize for being so inquisitive, but yet the average taxpayer doesn't understand, and I would not be able to explain